Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so today we're tackling a really unique challenge, teaching complex civic and economic concepts to fourth graders. Look, if you've ever tried to explain to a 9-year-old why they can't just have whatever they want exactly when they want it, well, you know exactly how daunting this can be, right? But imagine if we could structure a lesson so perfectly that they actually arrive at that realization entirely on their own.
It's a fascinating question. How do you teach a 9-year-old to prioritize the common good over the loudest voice in the room? In a world just full of competing demands, getting young students to look past whoever is yelling the loudest and focus instead on what the data actually says is absolutely crucial. Honestly, it's a skill a lot of adults struggle with. Yet here we are, tasked with building this foundation of discernment super early on. Well, this brilliantly illustrates a potential solution. It's called the Railroad. It's a 3-day, project-based mini-mission designed specifically for fourth grade social studies, and it teaches exactly this skill. It's essentially part of a larger framework focused entirely on discernment, putting data over the loudest voice. By placing students in a simulated regional planning board, it weaves geography, economics, and civics all together into one really compelling narrative. So here's our quick roadmap for the explainer. First, we'll look at the railroad mini-mission overall. Then we dive into day 1, geographic reasoning, followed by day 2, budget constraints, and day 3, the vote. Finally, we'll wrap up with assessment and scaffolding. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's begin with day 1, which is all about geographic reasoning.
Right out of the gate, these kids are put right in the shoes of a regional planning board tasked with placing a brand new train station. The rule is super simple. Build one station that serves the most people across the region. But the core conflict? It's right here in the data. We've got Riverton, a town with a population of 800, sitting way off in a corner by the river. Then we have Centerville, the smallest town, just 300 people, but it's sitting right where all the roads meet. And finally, there's Hilltop, with 500 people, situated way up in the hills with just one narrow road. And this setup prompts a crucial aha moment for the students. They really have to compare Riverton directly against Centerville. Now, the obvious gut reaction choice for a kid is to pick Riverton, right? I mean, it's the biggest town. 800 is definitely bigger than 300. But when they look closely at the data, they realize something. Centerville might technically be the smallest town, but because it sits right in the center where all the roads connect, it actually allows 1,200 people from across the whole region to reach it. The teacher's answer key reinforces this exact takeaway. The real lesson here is geographic reasoning. Think about it. A railroad connects people, so a central, highly connected location serves the region far better than just, picking the biggest town that happens to be isolated in a corner. Boom. The students have successfully used data to override a basic assumption.
Moving right along, we hit day 2, where things get a bit more complicated with budget constraints.
So, the students have figured out the geography, right? But now, the narrative throws a curveball and introduces the harsh realities of economics with a strict $50,000 budget. When you visualize the costs, the choice becomes instantly obvious. Building a station in Centerville, that costs $40,000 because the roads already meet there. Hilltop costs $55,000. And Riverton, well, that requires building a whole new bridge, driving the cost up to an impossible $70,000. Suddenly, Centerville is literally the only option that actually fits the budget.
And just as the narrative hits this financial snag, the lesson seamlessly sneaks in some formal economics vocabulary. It's brilliant because we aren't just doing math here, we're actively learning the actual language of civic planning, like the concept of scarcity, meaning there simply isn't enough money for everything. That leads us to a really crucial point, understanding opportunity cost, which is what you give up when you choose one thing over another. The students are asked a great hypothetical. What if the board just insisted on Riverton anyway? The answer they come up with is pretty profound for a fourth grader. If the board caved and spent that $70,000 on Riverton, the region wouldn't just be over budget. They would actually lose money meant for other vital projects. What you give up is your opportunity cost. All right, this brings us to the climax of the mission, day 3, the vote. This is where civics really takes center stage. Picture this, a simulated regional meeting where town representatives step right up to the microphone and the students actually have to evaluate their arguments. Take Riverton's loud, totally emotion-based argument. Their rep gets up and says, "We're the biggest town. The station belongs here. We deserve it." It's a claim based entirely on self-interest, completely ignoring both regional access and that massive price tag we just talked about.
But then, contrast that immediately with Centerville's representative. Their calm plea relies entirely on the hard evidence the class gathered over days 1 and 2. They say, put it where the most people can reach it for the lowest cost. The data points to the center. It's such a perfect, real-world example of how a truly strong argument uses evidence, whereas just yelling, "we deserve it," well, that just doesn't cut it. For the final task, these fourth graders have to synthesize everything into an official recommendation, one that formally places the common good above self-interest. They have to write a 4 to 6 sentence recommendation naming the location, citing at least 2 specific pieces of data from the previous days, like, say, the 1,200 reachable people or the $40,000 cost. And they have to articulate exactly why the needs of the whole region outweigh one single town's demands. Finally, let's look at assessment and scaffolding. It's all about how we support every learner. Now, a lesson this robust is incredible, right? But how do we make sure it's actually accessible to every single 9-year-old in the room, totally regardless of their reading level? Well, for learners who need a bit of extra support, scaffolded pages offer helpful sentence frames and starting hints. It gives them frames like, "the board recommends blank because." This lowers the mechanical barrier of writing, but, and this is key, it leaves the critical thinking and the actual judging squarely in the hands of the student. And when it comes down to grading, the assessment rubric breaks things down into 3 clear steps. Essentially, it evaluates the students on their evidence-based public reasoning rather than simply whether they picked the right town. A top score means step 1, they used the reachable numbers and cost data correctly. Step 2, they reasoned about both geography and economics. And step 3, they explicitly chose the common good over a self-interested argument. It's assessing their whole mental model, not just asking them to fill in a multiple choice bubble. At the very end of the whole thing, the students complete a capstone reflection, answering one final crucial question. Give one example where the obvious choice, the biggest town, turned out not to be the best. As you think about this kind of task being given to these young minds, ask yourself, how powerful is a lesson in discernment that proves the loudest voice isn't always right? Honestly, if we can teach 9-year-olds to pause, look at the data, and choose the common good over sheer entitlement, just imagine how much better our adult civic discourse could be. Thanks for exploring this brilliant lesson with me today.